Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
I'm Isabelle. At 33, I lead what appears to be a respectable life as an office professional, but beneath that facade lies someone else entirely. Inside me burns an uncontrollable desire that I've tried and failed to suppress. What started as a fleeting temptation has grown into an all-consuming obsession. The revelation came about a year into my marriage. Things with my husband Michael were comfortable. We shared a loving, affectionate relationship. But everything changed after that fateful business trip to LA, where a chance encounter over drinks showed me what I was capable of. That night marked a point of no return. The intensity of that experience awakened something primal within me, and I knew there was no going back. And so began my double life, maintaining the appearance of a devoted wife while pursuing countless encounters on the side. The thrill was intoxicating. Though guilt initially gnawed at me because of my love for Michael, passion eventually won out. Whether in downtown parking garages, hotel bars, or after-work functions, I found myself constantly scanning for new possibilities. Each lingering glance from a stranger sent electricity through my body. The instant chemistry between two people, I became hopelessly addicted to it all. The situation grew complicated when my coworker Oscar confronted me. "Something's different about you lately. You're hiding something, aren't you?" My heart sank. He'd picked up on my numerous liaisons. I played it off with a smile, but from then on, I felt his eyes following me. Strangely enough, his scrutiny only added to the excitement. Then came Oscar's direct approach. "Let's be honest, you've been giving me signals too." In that moment, I realized just how far I'd strayed. Here I was, entertaining yet another temptation while Michael waited faithfully at home. That night, I crossed another line. I told myself I felt remorse, but it was just an act. I couldn't stop myself, and part of me wondered where this path would ultimately lead. Reality came crashing down the day Michael discovered my phone. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his voice ice cold. My mind went completely blank as I stared at him holding my phone, all my incriminating messages displayed on the screen. "What is this?" he repeated, his voice cold and harsh. I struggled to find words, my throat suddenly dry. "They're just work conversations. Nothing important," I managed, trying to sound casual. But Michael's penetrating stare didn't waver. After scrolling through more messages, he placed the phone on the table. "Isabelle." The way he said my name, once filled with warmth, now cut like a knife. Desperately maintaining my composure, I forced a smile. "Is something wrong?" In response, Michael held up the phone, displaying a damning photo. I felt sick. There I was, at the Hilton Hotel lounge, wine in hand and laughing with a stranger. My hand rested intimately on his arm, my expression one of unmistakable pleasure. "Explain." Michael's tone was ice cold. My thoughts raced frantically for an escape route. "It's not what it looks like. He's just a colleague." The photo makes it seem worse than it is, but nothing happened. My excuses sounded hollow even to my own ears. Michael's suspicion only intensified. "What about these other photos?" He continued swiping through the screen as my breath caught in my throat. There were more. So many more than I'd realized. Photos of me with different men, walking through the Four Seasons hotel corridor, sharing intimate whispers in the downtown parking garage. Who had been watching me? Who had sent these to Michael? My mind spun with panic as words failed me completely. My mind went completely blank. The depth of my exposed secrets hit me like a ton of bricks. Michael put down his phone with a knowing smirk. "Let's be honest here. How many were there?" In that moment, my heart sank as I sensed he knew everything. His expression was ice cold, masking a simmering anger beneath. "How many were there?" he repeated, his sharp words piercing me. "What do you mean, how many?" I desperately searched for an excuse. But this time, I knew no explanation would suffice. Still not going to answer? Michael pressed as I nervously bit my lip. The silence was damning, but I had to say something. It was just things that happened at happy hours. They didn't mean anything. I tried to meet Michael's eyes as I spoke, but my gaze kept faltering, and he definitely noticed. With another smirk, he picked up his phone again. This one didn't mean anything either. A more incriminating photo appeared, me in someone's embrace outside the Marriott. His fingers running through my hair, my body pressed against his. My breath caught in my throat. Who had taken this? How did Michael get it? Want to see more? Or are you ready to tell the truth? Michael's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. I clenched my fists, my thoughts spinning out of control. I'm sorry. The admission finally escaped my lips. Michael just stared at me silently, as if waiting for more. But when nothing else came, he let out a heavy sigh and stood up. What happens now? Those words sent chills down my spine. Michael wasn't just angry, he seemed to be contemplating the end of our marriage. I steadied myself against the table, my hands trembling. I made a mistake. It won't happen again, I swear. I pleaded desperately, but my words bounced right off him. Won't happen again. Do you actually believe that? Michael looked down at me with a bitter smile. Because I don't. Right then, I knew this relationship might be beyond saving. Yet somehow, a bizarre feeling stirred inside me. Michael catching me, his cold demeanor, even this confrontation, it was all oddly thrilling. What was wrong with me? After that day, Michael completely shut me out. He wouldn't look at me when he came home from work, and he started sleeping in the guest room. It was like I had become invisible. But strangely enough, his indifference was suffocating. Or more precisely, I was terrified that Michael no longer cared about me. Before, even during my affairs, Michael had always been there waiting when I came home. That was my safety net, allowing me to maintain my double life. But now, I faced the real possibility that Michael wouldn't hold on anymore. Anxiety crept in. One night, acting on impulse, I grabbed my phone and messaged one of my previous lovers. I miss you. After hitting send, my heart raced wildly. Within minutes, he replied, Where are you? Want me to come over? I threw on my coat and headed for the door. That's when I felt Michael's gaze from the living room. He sat on the couch, watching me silently. He didn't say a word. I hesitated briefly. Then I walked out. Was I hoping Michael would stop me? Or was it the thrill of his eyes on me that pushed me forward? I couldn't tell. No, maybe I didn't want to know. I kept glancing at my phone as I walked. My thoughts were racing about my decision. The strangest part was that Michael knew what I was doing, but made no move to stop me. Was it trust, or had he simply stopped caring? My thoughts were a jumbled mess by the time I reached the hotel lobby. In the elevator, I caught my reflection. My cheeks were flushed pink. Was it guilt eating at me, or the electric thrill of being caught? When the doors slid open, there was Patrick, looking sharp in his pressed shirt, greeting me with that easy smile of his. I stood there wordlessly, waiting. His voice was low and intimate when he spoke. I drew in a shallow breath and met his gaze. Even then, Michael's face flickered through my mind. His icy stare and emotionless expression haunting me. But I'd already crossed this line. The next morning when I returned home, one question kept nagging at me. Why was Michael so silent about all this? Had his love finally run dry, or was this his way of punishing me? Walking into the living room, I found him exactly where I'd left him. But something was different. A document lay on the table before him. My stomach dropped as I approached and realized what it was. Divorce papers. I could only stare, numb with shock, as Michael said flatly, without even looking up, "Sign it." Those two words held zero emotion. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Michael finally met my eyes. "What does it look like?" "It's the freedom you've been chasing." My heart plummeted. Freedom. Sure, maybe I could survive without Michael. After all, hadn't I been living life on my own terms already? But something felt off. His calmness threw me. Where was the anger, the fight to keep me? He was just letting go, quietly ending everything. You're joking, right? I forced a laugh, but Michael's face remained stone cold. Does this look like a joke to you? I was speechless. Reality hit hard. Michael was really walking away. I'd always assumed he'd fight for us, that there would be shouting and accusations. Instead, there was just nothing. His emotional shutdown terrified me more than any outburst would have. I still. The words stuck in my throat. Still what? That I wasn't ready for divorce? That I still loved him? That this couldn't be happening? Michael let out a heavy sigh and got to his feet. Whatever happens, we're getting divorced, he said quietly, sliding the papers toward me. Let's make this clean. My hands clenched into fists. Was this really it? Until now, I'd never truly felt remorse. Sure, I'd put on a show of regret, but it had never been real. Now, finally, I understood what genuine regret felt like. That night, I sat in my room staring at those papers, my mind racing. Was I actually prepared for divorce, or was this freedom not what I'd wanted after all? I couldn't sleep as the weight of those papers seemed to press down on my chest. Come morning, Michael went through his usual routine, but something was off. There was no heading out, just a silent glance as he reached for the door. Wait. The word burst out before I could stop it. Michael froze, but didn't turn around. How can you end things just like that? I managed to say. There was so much more I wanted to tell him. Let's think this through. Give me another chance. But my throat closed up, and the words wouldn't come. Michael sighed deeply. As he opened the door, he spoke quietly. You're the only one who thinks this is sudden, Michael stated flatly. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone in the empty living room. The news knocked the wind out of me. Michael had made his decision, and here I was, speechless. A familiar tightness gripped my chest. Why was I feeling this way when I was about to get the freedom I'd supposedly wanted? The day at work was a complete blur. I kept messing up simple tasks, my mind elsewhere. When quitting time rolled around, I found myself reaching for my phone out of habit. Usually on days like this, I'd seek comfort in another man's arms, trying to drown out the loneliness and anxiety. But something felt different today. My fingers just wouldn't dial those familiar numbers. Instead, I set the phone down and headed home. The house was dark and silent when I arrived. Michael wasn't home yet. I dropped my bag and surveyed the living room, really taking it in for the first time. Soon, when Michael leaves, this place will be nothing but an empty shell. Just me, alone with my thoughts. My eyes fell on the divorce papers still sitting on the table. I picked up a pen, wondering if I should just get it over with. But as much as I stared at those papers, I couldn't bring myself to make that first mark. The sound of the front door jolted me from my thoughts. I looked up, and my heart stopped. Michael wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. She was stunning, with sleek straight hair and a crisp blouse, wearing a gentle smile that made my stomach turn. Isabelle, I'd like you to meet Ashley, Michael said, his voice unnervingly calm. In that instant, everything clicked into place. Michael had already moved on. My Michael had brought another woman into our home, right in front of me. I stood there frozen, forgetting even to breathe. Ashley's warm smile felt like a knife to my gut. She looked at me as if we were old friends. Hi, I'm Ashley, she said softly. I couldn't form words, my throat completely constricted. I'll call you later, Michael told her. Ashley nodded, flashed me one more perfect smile, and disappeared through the door. Only when it closed behind her did I remember to breathe. What the hell is this? I finally managed to croak out. Michael shrugged off his coat as if this was just another normal evening. Exactly what it looks like. Since we're ending things, I'm starting fresh too. My heart plummeted to my stomach. So you brought her here to rub it in my face? Michael's lips curved into a bitter smirk. You've been with countless other men. I put up with all of that, but I can't see someone else. His words hit home like arrows. He was right. I had betrayed him over and over. But that's different. I protested weakly. How exactly is it different? Michael's piercing gaze bore into me. I opened and closed my mouth, but no words came. How was it different? The truth was, I'd always assumed Michael would be there waiting, ready to forgive my indiscretions like he always had. But this wasn't the Michael I knew anymore. He wasn't waiting in the wings for me. Let's finish this, Isabelle. Michael gestured to the divorce papers, his voice as cold as ice. The warmth I'd always known in his eyes was gone completely. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Your freedom. With trembling hands, I picked up the pen again and stared at the papers. My mind was racing. Yes, this was what I'd been chasing. Freedom from Michael, the ability to live life on my own terms without being tied down. But now, that word freedom felt hollow, meaningless. An invisible weight crushed my chest. Why couldn't I breathe properly? Why was signing my name suddenly the hardest thing in the world? I willed my hand to move, but the pen remained frozen above the paper. I can't do it, I whispered. Michael's expression hardened instantly. What do you mean, you can't do it? His voice carried equal parts disbelief and anger. No. I forced myself to meet his gaze, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I can't go through with the divorce. Michael ran his fingers through his hair with an exasperated sigh. Don't play games, Isabelle. His tone carried a clear warning. I'm not playing, I said, rising on shaky legs and taking a step toward him. A cold sweat broke out across my skin. I see everything clearly now. What I'm throwing away, how incredibly stupid I've been. Michael's gaze was ice cold. Now you feel remorse? Yes. The tears welling in my eyes matched the rawness in my voice. There was no point in hiding or lying anymore. I managed to say through my tears, I regret everything. I was such a fool. I was so wrong. Michael let out a harsh laugh. Please tell me it's not too late, I pleaded, my voice barely above a whisper. Can't we start over? Michael's silence spoke volumes. He had already let me go. Staring down at the divorce papers, the harsh reality finally hit me. The freedom I'd been chasing had been slowly destroying everything all along. Had I really thrown it all away? My hands clenched into tight fists. When I looked up at Michael, his eyes were devoid of their usual warmth. So this is really the end? My voice cracked on the last word. Yes! That single word from Michael felt like ice in my veins. I made one last desperate attempt. I desperately wanted to go to him, to hold him, to somehow piece our relationship back together. But he wouldn't even meet my eyes. In that moment, the truth hit me like a physical blow. No matter how much I begged or regretted, I could never get him back. With trembling fingers, I picked up the pen and held it over the papers. My mind was spinning with what-ifs. If only I could turn back time. If only I had shown Michael more love when I had the chance. If only I had stopped myself just once. But it was too late now. Taking a deep breath, I slid the signed papers across to Michael. He reviewed them silently, then carefully folded them and tucked them into his bag. He looked at me one last time. Any regrets? A bitter smile crossed my face. I'll spend the rest of my life regretting this. Michael's expression remained unchanged. He rose slowly from his chair, and I watched his back as he walked away. Take care, I whispered. He paused for a moment at the door, but left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed through the empty house. Only then did I collapse to the floor, my legs giving out beneath me. The freedom I'd wanted so desperately had finally arrived. Yet here I was, feeling like I'd just lost the most precious thing in my life. And then it hit me with crushing clarity. Some mistakes can never be undone.